This is my 1987 BMW K75. I've had it since the year 2000 and I've done about 65,000 miles on it, and in total it's done about 90,000. These bikes are becoming really popular again as classic bikes, and the purists and the modified guys are getting them back on the road. And what they're tending to find, because the bikes are old, is they're getting overheating problems. So I thought I'd just do a video on how to identify and overcome those problems, as I've had to do over the 20 years that I've owned the bike. Now my bike is pretty standard. The only thing that's different is that it's now got a belly pan. It didn't have that till this year, and I just did it because I wanted to protect the underside. Behind the belly pan is the oil water pump, and you can just see it in there. And under the oil water pump is the water temperature sender, if you've got a gauge, and the oil pressure sender, which is on all the bikes. The K bikes are water cooled. They have a radiator just under the tank, and in this housing is a thermostat, just like you'd see in a car. This is the air intake that comes along into the airbox. The routing of the water, it's filled from here. The filler cap is here, just under the tank. It goes down through the bottom of the radiator, down through the shroud there, into the oil water pump, which is there, which then circulates it through the engine, brings it up in the middle, just about here, and then puts it back in and circulates it all the way around. Now obviously if you've got circulation problems, the bike is going to heat up, and what normally happens is the radiator will split, and it nearly always splits just there. If the bike is very old, and mine is 33 years old, it's really worthwhile changing the temperature sender. They are made by Bosch. They're about 35 quid, and they go in there. Looking at it from the other side, you can see there's a stub in there and the return hose that comes up to here. Obviously all the hoses need to be in good condition, all the joints need to be correctly sealed. I would recommend blue Hylamar when you assemble that. Now the stub down there, that is where the water temperature sender is. Now that is a two-part sender, and it sends a signal to the ECU to control the fuel injection, and it sends a signal to the fan to turn the fan on. Now the fan is here, behind here, and I will show cutaways from other videos so that you can actually see what it is. I've upgraded my fan. I've got a new one. I've got a very high powered one, and I've given it its own individual switch. I've now got a switch here. I would say the main reason for these bikes overheating is that either the fan doesn't come on early enough, or the fan doesn't come on at all. Now, over a long period of time, the fan will actually stop working. One broke up inside. It's not that easy to see, but that is the commutator. And I had no idea that that had happened, because here in the UK I was lucky if the fan actually came on once a year, and that would be on the hottest day of the year, sort of 30 degrees. But if you're in America or well, Europe, you get a lot of hot days and the fan should be coming on all the time. The trouble is, it's not always coming on early enough. My bike doesn't have a temperature gauge, so I fitted this on the gearbox, and the gearbox runs at 80 degrees. 80 degrees there is not 80 degrees in the radiator, and the radiator is supposed to run at 88 degrees before the fan kicks in. The greatest worry, of course, is the fan doesn't kick in, the bike gets really hot, and then it splits the radiator. So there's a few ways to overcome that. A temporary fix is to take the thermostat out of this housing and run it without the thermostat. and that means the bike will effectively never heat up. This is the thermostat out of my bike. Now you can test these by hanging them on a wire and put them in a glass of boiling water and watching them activate so that it actually opens up. If it doesn't open up, you need to get a new one. If you just take it out of the bike completely, the bike will take absolutely ages to heat up and will probably never get to operating temperature. Now that sounds terrible, but it's not a big deal on a BMW because it's electronically controlled and it will compensate for that. The other thing you can do, which is what I've done on my bike, is to drill a small hole through this flange so that there's a constant flow around the main flow all the time. Now, in the old days I used to have Ford Capris, and in the Ford Capri there would be a hole with a little special fish vane that would close the hole up so that the engine could heat up without heating up too quickly before the main vane actually opened. The best thing you can do though is put a manual switch on your fan. So that's what I've done. And there's the manual switch. So if I click that on, that will run. Now there's two ways of wiring that up. You can wire it up so that it runs independent of everything, and mine is actually directly wired to the battery. You can just about see those orange cables. Or you can put it into an auxiliary that only comes on when you turn the ignition on. And both of them have got their benefits. The obvious benefit is that if you wire it to an auxiliary, you can't leave the fan running, so you can't walk off and come back 2 hours later to find your bike isn't working anymore. But to be honest, if you're that stupid that you can't hear the fan running, be honest, you shouldn't be riding the bike. One of the other things that you should do is make sure that your antifreeze to water mix is the correct mix. According to my Haynes manual, I need to put in 3 litres of coolant mixed at 60-40. So I've got the antifreeze and I've got a big tub of battery top-up water. I always use distilled water and I use blue antifreeze. This absolutely incenses some people who go, oh, it should be orange antifreeze. Thing is, orange antifreeze wasn't actually invented till 1995 and mine is an 87 bike, so it never had it in it. If you get the mix wrong, the bike can overheat. Just like most cars, the BMW has a radiator header tank, and that's just here. The header tank does have a cap on it. It's really only a breather, it's not for filling this up. Although I suppose you could do a little bit of topping up if this was very low. But my concern would be that it wouldn't actually suck it back into the radiator. In order to fill the tank, the filler point is there, underneath the tank. So you have to lift the tank to get it off. Now, if you're lucky and your fuel lines are long enough, you don't have to take the fuel lines off. If you've got short fuel lines, unfortunately you'll have to take them off. Now this is the overflow pipe, which I've actually replaced with a high pressure fuel pipe. If you squeeze that, little bubbles come out. You need to let that kind of settle for a while before you put the top back on. If you have got one of these bikes, it's really worthwhile signing up to the Facebook forums. I'm in 2, I'm in the purists and I'm in the modified, and you see loads of really useful information. Some of it's less useful, particularly in the modified section where people have done horrible things to their bikes, particularly with the electronics, because the electronics on these bikes are 33 years old and probably don't care for being upgraded.